post office put a strategy in front of Tynwald that said we want to have, I think they said at least one service access point per constituency. And when you see something like that, it makes you think, well, actually what they really want is one per constituency, one within every 3-mile area, I think they said. So that means that we've currently got, I think, 20. We're going to be going down, by the looks of things, to 12 or 13 perhaps. So I'd like to know really which ones do they think, as part of their strategy, are at greatest risk, and are they planning for this? Is there some forward planning going on? Or are they saying, well, we're just going to wait and see what happens and deal with everything quite reactively and just see what we can do as and when things arise? I mean, if you've got a 5-year plan, they must be forward planning. They must be trying to make sure that people in these areas that they've identified at greatest risk are going to still have access to some level of service. I just want to know what their thoughts are on that.
We've seen just in the last day at Ballasalla where the public has been quite outspoken, there's been campaigning, and now the post office has said they are going to seek a new service partner for that area. Does this show that there is still a big demand for public counters?
I think that's a complex question. I think the answer from my perspective is yes. I think the public on the Isle of Man really like to be able to access government services face to face. It's one of the strengths of our small community, really, is that you can pick up the phone and talk to someone. You can go into an office and ask for help. And I think the feedback from Ballasalla, from what I've seen, was very much along those lines. They like the ability to go and talk to someone about their driving licence applications or passport applications or whatever service it is they're trying to access. And this comes on to the second question that I'm asking about minimum service levels, minimum standards, because what we've seen in Ballasalla is the post office seemingly decided we're going to put a kiosk in. A lot of public feedback, a lot of concern about that, and their response was, we're going to put a kiosk in, but we're going to have someone help you with the kiosk. But actually that misses the point, I think, in some ways, that the kiosk doesn't provide access to benefit collection, doesn't provide access to pension collection. So what we need to be looking at, not just as the post office, but in the broader context of government, is, okay, so how do we make sure that these government services, pension collections, benefit collections, and perhaps other government services, are accessible and available in the community? Obviously, from a Ramsey perspective, the commissioners in Ramsey have got a nice town hall. We've seen the police move into the town hall. We've seen the benefit collection service move into the town hall. We've seen the job centre now move into the town hall. We're actually seeing this in Ramsey, more and more government services provided from one location. And so the question on my mind really is this a model that can work for more face-to-face interaction? And especially in this age of climate consciousness, where we're trying to say, actually, can we enable more things like remote working as well? Actually, can we turn some of our local service facilities like town halls into government hubs, really, where people can have those face-to-face conversations about things that concern them, about government services? I personally think the answer to that is yes. We are seeing that direction of travel, and my worry with the way we're going with the post office is that's actually moving in completely the opposite direction, where there really isn't this consideration of the bigger picture of actually how do we enable the citizen to access this service. What they're really more concerned on is how they worry about their bottom line, and I think in some respects that's a very narrow perspective and one we need to get away from.
You mentioned a few moments ago about the post office having a plan. We've seen now they announced about Ballasalla, and there seems to have now been some change there. Does that show that the plan isn't working?
I'm not so sure about that. I think, from my perspective, I didn't support the plan in the first place because it didn't take into account any of these wider considerations. I've said from the start that the plan is too narrow. The focus is purely on money, which actually isn't the way we should be looking at some of our services. It's more about community. It's more about making sure those services are accessible. The plan itself seems to be moving us towards fewer and fewer locations. Now, that may not be a bad thing, provided those locations are providing the right level of service. And that is the gap in the plan, and nowhere in that plan have they identified what is the minimum level of service we are going to be offering from our locations. They have never specified that. I've asked the question a number of times, and I keep getting batted back. I keep getting it thrown back. And what that says to me is this plan has not been fully thought through. They haven't really considered some of these questions, and I think it's time that we made them consider some of these questions.
You mentioned a few of the services already, but what, in your opinion, is the minimum level of service the post office should be offering?
From my perspective, that comes down to what actually is needed in those communities. So with the minimum level of service, if people need to access benefit collections, pension collections, that should be available locally. If people want to be able to access current government services like driving licence applications or passport forms, they should be able to access those services within their locale without having to say, well, you've got to go to Douglas and speak to the people at central government. So the minimum level of service needs to be focused around what the communities need, and it might be that a minimum level of service can vary if there's more than one, what they call access point within the community. But where there is one access point in a community, I would expect that access point to provide the full suite of services. I would be very concerned if they were saying that, okay, there will be one postal service point in your community, but it's only going to offer 2 or 3 services, whereas actually, the ones in other areas of the island might be offering a full suite. So if they're gonna narrow the number of locations, they have to be saying, but those locations will provide a full service.